In 1988, the Fair Housing Act was amended to include people with disabilities as an additional protected group. With that came an additional provision of law that was added that related to how multifamily properties had to be constructed. Specifically, that they had to meet accessibility requirements. So this applies to 4-unit or more buildings that are built for first occupancy on or after March 13, 1991. As it relates to the building construction, it really matters if the building has an elevator or not. If it has an elevator, then every floor and every unit served by that elevator has to meet the Fair Housing Act accessibility requirements. If there's not an elevator, then every ground floor has to meet the accessibility requirements. Under the Fair Housing Act, there are 7 required design elements. Let's start first with an accessible entrance and route. That means that if sidewalks are present, they have to have a minimum of 36 inches of clearance. So if there are trash cans, potted plants, they cannot impede upon that 36-inch route. And that ensures that somebody using a wheelchair can safely navigate that route and not fall off the sidewalk. Second, accessible and usable public areas. If there are any sort of amenities for the property, such as an on-site leasing office, gyms, mailboxes, play areas, all of those features must be on accessible routes. People with disabilities want to watch their kids play in the swing set or play basketball themselves. They have a right to have access to the same features as those without disabilities. If any parking is provided at the property, it needs to have adequate signage and it needs to have the striped access aisles to allow somebody to load and unload with their wheelchair. The accessible parking spots also need to have access to a curb ramp to allow somebody to navigate onto the accessible route. Curb ramps need to be located near where the accessible parking is. It's important to remember that when it comes to curb ramps, that you need to make sure that people using the sidewalk are also able to get around the curb ramp. The third design requirement is usable doors. What the Fair Housing Act requires is that doors have a minimum clearance of a 32-inch, what's called a nominal clearance. So that's sometimes just a little bit under 32 inches. Handles, locks, latches must be operable without twisting of the wrist. If there's any threshold to get into the door, that has to be 3/4 of an inch or less. A higher threshold would violate the Fair Housing Act because of the fact that somebody could tip trying to get over that threshold in their wheelchair. The fourth design requirement is an accessible route into and through the dwelling unit. Hallways, like the exterior route, must have a minimum clearance of 36 inches. So if there are water fountains, trash cans, anything like that within the hallway, they cannot impede upon that 36 inches of clearance. Any slope or ramp to get into that interior route, like on the exterior, has to be at a 1 to 12 inch max. That means, again, 1 inch of rise over the course of 12 inches. The fifth design element is environmental controls. This refers to outlets, light switches, thermostats. They cannot be any lower than 15 inches and no higher than 48 inches. This allows somebody who might be using a wheelchair to be able to safely reach for these items from their chair. The sixth design element is reinforced bathroom walls. So there must be backing behind bathroom walls so somebody can safely add grab bars later. The grab bars don't have to be installed, but the backing needs to be there on the wall so somebody can add grab bars later. This typically is around toilet and tubs, for instance, so somebody can safely put in those grab bars and put weight on them and not have them pull out of the walls. The last design element is usable kitchens and bathrooms. There needs to be a 30 by 48 inch clear space for somebody to maneuver with their wheelchair. Appliances need to be positioned so somebody can safely approach them at a parallel basis. Kitchens and bathrooms need to meet these accessible features because they're so important within our daily living. If a bathroom door cannot shut behind somebody using a wheelchair, it does not meet the accessibility requirements. Somebody needs to be able to safely enter into a bathroom, maneuver, and shut the door behind them. When we think about design and construction requirements, most of us think about wheelchair users. And we need to remember that people with disabilities come in many shapes and sizes. These can include people who might use walkers, crutches, or who may have missing limbs, for instance, use walking canes or have a walking stick of some kind. It's also important to know that those without disabilities can greatly benefit from the accessibility features required under the Fair Housing Act. A family pushing a stroller, movers moving in furniture, any number of individuals can benefit from having the accessible features.